Hi everybody, hope you're having a fantastic day so far. Today I'm going to be redoing the spark plugs on the Thunderbird, and so I just wanted to make a video kind of walking through, trying to share whatever knowledge I have on routing and what kind of spark plugs, things like that, or what spark plug wires. And I might have to wear my shades, it's pretty bright out here. Got to get the cool factor. So yeah. The spark plug wires that I put on initially I put these on pretty soon after I bought the car, and they're just Napa wires, but I'm not sure what the problem is. But basically, my shadow's in the way there. But basically, I think there's a problem with the insulation on either the boots or the wires themselves. But there's no visible problems, but something seems to be off with them. So basically what happens is when I'm in here trying to adjust the carburetor or whatever, if you touch these or contact them, you'll get a zap. And so that's a problem that definitely shouldn't be happening. It makes it hard to adjust the carb. And because it doesn't hurt, but it jolts you pretty good. So, not sure exactly what the problem was, but we're going to dive into that a little bit. So, I think it's just a problem with insulation. So, I guess to start off, when it comes to running wires, you can either buy a set for your car, or you can custom make your wires. So basically you'll get different lengths of wire, or in a spool or whatever, however it comes, and then you'll get your own boots and a pair of crimpers, things like that, and you make your own and you custom fit them. And that's one way to go. But for most people, you'll be looking at something like this, which is an aftermarket set, and depending on what your engine is, so you'll have different different number of spark plugs. But so today, in today's video, I think we'll just focus on a V8 application, and this is specifically Ford. So let's see, a couple of things I guess to set off. So there is, for most vehicles there will be a technically correct factory setting set up on the routing for the wires. But when you're doing something yourself, aftermarket or hot rodding, whatever, you can kind of do whatever you want, I suppose. But this motor here, the correct factory routing is over top of the valve covers. Now these are aftermarket valve covers, and they don't have the mounting bracket that the original ones did. So the original ones, I think this piece is actually off the original, but it's a wire loom, so there would be a little clip on here, and this would have clipped in here to hold them. But I don't have that obviously with these ones here. Now you can get aftermarket looms that kind of are on a bit of a bracket, I guess you'd say, that comes off. The only ones I could find online were not short enough, or were not tall enough to clear my valve cover anyways. So that's something I'd like to do in the future. I might look into actually seeing about like JB welding this onto the valve cover, but for right now I'm just leaving them loose and routing them over top. So when you're routing spark plug wires, especially in a situation that you kind of have to fit them yourself, custom fit them, I think probably the first big rule is that you don't want them touching your manifold, your exhaust manifold. Now, if you're running a set of headers on your car, it'll be a little bit more difficult. If there's anywhere, I'll just back up. With this application, there's not really, hopefully you can see that in there. I know it's kind of bright outside, but there's no nowhere that they're touching the boots. Now if they're getting close to anywhere, or you want to be just a little precautious, it's not a bad idea to put some insulating You can get different, like a boot, or you can get insulating tape, and it's a special kind of metallic tape that, or boot that just shields the spark plug from getting too hot. When it gets hot, it can actually interrupt with your current flow, so you can get a poor performance. That's, I think, typically one of the reasons to do it, especially if you're doing high performance, high RPM performance with your motor. But just to, and otherwise, just to keep him from coming off, or keep him from kind of fusing on there, but then also keep your plug from burning, your plug wires from burning or melting. And so that's the first rule. With this application here, they come straight out. Hopefully you can see that. It's kind of a bright day, but they come straight out, and they're not anywhere close. So I'm not worried about it. From factory, they didn't come with it. Depending on what car you had, it may or may not have come factory that way with insulating boots, just the way the configuration and so on. Then the second rule is you don't want your spark plugs to touch anything, but specifically not to touch each other. So there's something that happens especially at high RPM. So we're talking mostly like a race application, but when you get into higher RPM, I don't know exactly how high, but I think I want 7,000 or something or greater. But I think if it does that high, there's probably going to be a little bit of effect in all RPM ranges, but I think it's really noticeable when you get high RPM like that. But what happens if your wires are contacting? So what I mean by that is if you have two wires that are touching, they can start to actually rob current from each other. So it'll throw off your ignition timing and just really mess with things. So despite there being insulation, just with that high RPM, there's something about it that when they're contacting, they can steal power from each other. So I don't know. I've never experienced that myself. It's just what I've heard different people say, and it's also just best practice when you're routing to make sure that they're individual. So there's a couple reasons to do that. Like one, the heat. You don't want it to touching because of the heat. You don't want them touching because of the current that it can rob from each other. And then you don't want it touching something that could, rub through. So it's like a sharp edge or anything. And also just for appearance, So if that's your goal and your target, especially, if you're doing something for trying to get the best results out of it, that's what you want to go for. So essentially what I'm going to be doing is I'm really happy with the way I set these up the first time, or pretty happy at least. I got it so, as long as nothing's shifted, there should be, there's not one single spot where it's touching anything really. So we're going to basically just redo what I did initially. I'm going to just basically reroute them the same. And a couple tricks I'll show you. If there is a spot that you just can't get something to spread apart and that you think it's going to touch, I'll cut open a piece of tubing and put that in and zip tie it. And then I'll show you a trick for routing your spark plug wires with just using zip ties. Sorry, just using zip ties here. And then I also have, like I said, down the road I'm going to try to find a way to mount these a little off the valve covers. But for right now, I just tried to kind of rig it up so it's on the holder. And so it's just kind of resting there. And, when the vehicle's running, it doesn't really move much at all. So I'm not worried about that. And if anything, like all it's going to do is maybe just like rub on here. It's not going to, it's not like it's shaking all over the place with this motor. Maybe if I had a pretty hairy cam in here, it would shake a little more, but. So yeah, so that's basically just to keep it off the valve cover. I think, maybe, but when it comes to the current robbing, I think it specifically is between wire to wire, but it stands to reason that there could be some of that if you have like a contact. So if they're both contacting, the aluminum, they could transfer that way maybe. but I think that might be nitpicking a little bit. So yeah, hopefully I'm making sense. I'm really tired today, feeling kind of zonked out. I had a pretty long strenuous week, so hopefully I'm making coherent sense and whatnot. Yeah, so we'll get into this. I'll probably show just like kind of maybe one side. As you can see on this car, this side here involves a lot more work, and there's a lot more to get around. This side's a little more straightforward. But I'll just kind of go through what I do, and then, you know, each application is going to be different, so I figure it makes the most sense if I just kind of show you the basics and like how to do the zip tie deal and stuff, and then go from there, you know. So yeah, this set I bought is just from Rock Auto, and they seem like they were supposed to be like a kind of like a mild upgrade from stock, I guess, as far as like quality goes or whatever. One thing they did here is they sent me 2 ignition wires from the looks of it. So I don't know, this one's a straight boot, but what's different also is a little different connection. So I don't know if this is just a different, like for a different ignition box or a distributor or whatever. I don't know why that came. Anyway, so what I have on is the angled boot. So I think I'm just going to reuse that because it worked fine the way it was. A couple things you'll need is some wire cutters, maybe a knife if you're going to use some tubing. You need a bunch of these zip ties. Now these are black. I thought it would look nicer that way, but you know, if you're not caring about looks, but these ones will match my wires. Now the one thing I should say is these are like I think 8-inch ones, and they're about 1/4 inch wide. Okay, now if you can find wider ones, now typically the wider ones are going to be really long, so you'll probably be wasting extra money on that or whatever. But basically, if they're a little bit wider, that would probably be better because it'll give you a better shot at just keeping the wires apart. And I've laid these out in lengths, so there's 2 of each from this particular manufacturer. Now, one thing I did do is I got 2 boxes. So they're not that expensive to begin with, but especially when you're doing something like a custom motor, unless if you're gonna make your own wires to length, one thing you can do is just buy 2 sets, and then you can use the long ones. So like if you have a problem with the set being a little short, like you need a couple longer ones, well now you got 2, or you got 4 of each to choose from. So for instance, like on this motor, if I needed like, you know, if it was hard to get around stuff, or I really wanted to come the long way, you know, on you know, Hemis or even some Chevys and stuff, they might route. I don't know. I think Fords do as well. Like it really depends on the motor. There's some of each, but some motors will run around the front of the block. The wires will run around, and they'll, you know, mount up that way. But this, technically correct for this 429, is over the valve covers, with the exception that I've changed the valve covers so the mount doesn't work. But aside from that is how they're supposed to go on this motor, you know, from factory at least. So yeah, you can get 2 sets. And anyways, I feel like I'm rambling a little. Okay, so we got set up. Now typically the best thing to do, just so you don't get confused, is just to do 1 wire at a time. So I'm basically going to start by just unclipping these off the wire looms. Now I had a couple factory ones on the valve cover, but then you can find these online if you want to pick up some of these just to spread your wires. So you can see without that, they'd just be like all over the place, and they'd be touching and all that good stuff. So I'm going to proceed to cut the old ones off, taking off these zip tie things. Now I did not come up with the zip tie thing, just, you know, in case anybody thought I was had some superhuman intellect. I don't know who came up with it. It's been around for a while. But it's actually the first time you do it, it's like, ooh, that's so cool. And it's cheap. but it allows you to get really specific with where your wires are running. So you can see here, like in some spots I kind of had to pair them 2 by 2 or whatever. And you know, you can do as many as you need to get the wire so it's, you know, so they're not touching anywhere. Well, I'm going to finish taking these off. Then I'm going to run this whole side with the new wires, and then I'll show you how to proceed with clamping them together. Okay, so one thing I wanted to mention here is most spark plug wires I've encountered, the boot is loose on here and it'll actually slide. So sometimes you need to readjust it a little bit, but like on this one, I went to put it on, it wasn't really going on because the boot was so far down that the contact clip wasn't going on. So I just slid it up. Now when you put these on, you'll want to feel like a nice firm, you'll feel it kind of click on, pop on. And then you just want to adjust this if needed. You want to slide this down, like if it's too far up or whatever, so that it goes on and that this is about halfway down the porcelain. But you definitely want this boot over top of the porcelain part. I'll try to show you in a second here. It's kind of hard to see, but basically where the first step in the porcelain is, at least on these plugs here. See, that one doesn't want to go on for some reason, so sometimes I'll slide it way up. So it's like closer like that to the surface. It's like just a little bit down. There we go. Okay, so now it went on. So then I'm just going to slide the boot down a little bit. Hopefully you can pick up on that. So, I don't know, it might be hard for you to see the porcelain in there. I'm going to take my phone off the tripod here. See if I can get in there. So, yeah, here we go. So this is an old wire, but that's the idea. So you want to make sure that the porcelain is covered like that, so you know you don't have any arcing or whatever. Okay, so I got the new wires on here. Now, a couple of things I just want to mention. Also up here, where your boots go on, when you put it on, you'll feel it kind of like slip in, and you feel and or here it kind of feels like metal on metal kind of. So you just want to make sure those are on, but then also route them in a way so you can switch which angle you put them on. Let me turn this a little bit. You can there's no like ribbing or anything, so it can go any way really. So you want to kind of direct them in a way that makes the most sense. It's kind of hard to get the camera set up here, so I do apologize for that. So basically, the rule of thumb typically is that you'll start with your longest. So the farther back, the cylinder farthest back will be your longer wire in the package, and so on, and up until the front is your shortest. But it doesn't always work that way, so feel free to you can do whatever you want. It's a free country. But yeah, and then basically from there it's just kind of like getting creative. So from this position I have them here, they all run out nice side by side, but then but then they kind of split off, and then you're going to kind of have to figure out how to do it. So for instance, can you see that? Yeah, so these two here come down real nice, and then they go straight down to the plug. But this one here doesn't seem like that's making the most sense to maybe have this one here, because it goes underneath. So I think I might pop that off, and I think I might put it over top here. Maybe I don't know. So yeah, you just kind of fiddle with it a little bit. And just try to get it the most direct way, and also a way that you have enough room to tie it all in. Okay, hopefully you can hear me. Somebody's cutting grass, but the other thing too, when you put your boot in on, if you're not planning to take them off for a while, it's not a bad idea to maybe put a little bit of dielectric grease just inside the boot. So, for example, I would be this side here that goes on your spark plug. Now, you don't want to necessarily get too much grease on the contact itself, but just on the outside where it touches the porcelain, you can kind of coat the inside like so. Now, I'm not going to be doing that just because I don't necessarily think, you know, I'm probably going to be checking my plugs every so often anyways and stuff, so they'll probably be coming on and off a little bit. But so basically, we'll start with that. So there won't necessarily be a perfect scenario where every wire is going to make perfect sense, but as at least cosmetically, this probably makes the most sense and looks the best. You know, so if they're coming straight parallel or side by side off of the distributor, I think looks the best in this application. And then from there, then, you know, they can kind of go where they need. So I'm going to start by putting this smaller wire loom back on. Now, the one thing I forgot to mention is these are 7mm wires. There's different sizes. This is pretty standard for, like, you know, stock up to, you know, mild performance. You know, I've heard they can handle up to, you know, up to quite high RPM. I don't know, 6,000-7,000 probably easily. But then typically if you get like pretty extreme, you'd be going up to like 8mm or larger. But if you're watching this video, you're probably, or if you are drag racing or whatever, you probably already know far more than I do. So that's that. Then this next one here, I'm gonna put it back kind of where it was on the valve cover. So, and then you can kind of play with these a little bit to get it where you want it. So I'm gonna slide that here. So nothing here coming off has a chance to touch. It's either touching a boot here, which is double insulated. You know, so if this did slide over, you know, it's not the end of the world. I can just readjust it a little bit. And then from there, it runs down. These two coming down here would probably be okay. I might put a zip tie here, and then these two here are probably also okay. But I'm just gonna show you, I'm not actually gonna put one here, but just to make it the easiest to show you how to do this, I'm just gonna do a mock-up one here, and then I'll probably just take it off. But it's really easy. So what you do is you take a zip tie, and if you want like to look the prettiest, have the little knobby thing at the bottom. But so what you do is you go around, no matter how many wires you want to do together, like it doesn't matter, you just go around the whole. So say you wanted to put two, you just put it around the two. But this one, say we were going to do this in place of the holder, so I'd put one around and just get it loose, like you don't want it too tight. And then you take another zip tie, you come between two wires and underneath the zip tie. Okay, so like that. So the first one around, the second one, and then you just keep repeating that. I'm not too worried about looks, so I'm not really going to worry about where I put the knob or whatever. Okay, so now I got all three. So in this case, 4 wires, there'd be 3 going between each. And then what you do is you just gradually kind of tighten up all of them. So you tighten up the ones going over and around, tighten up the one back here, and you just do it in increments until you get it down where you want it. You don't want to like crank these too tight because you could cut into the, or you could start to deform the coating a little bit. So I wouldn't go too tight. You just want them just snug. And then you just prune them. Really easy. and you can put them anywhere. So like I said, like the knobby things if you were going for a little looks, but that's how it looks. So again, you got your big one, you got your main one going over. Now, at the beginning of the video I said you might want to go with bigger thickness. So with these ones, when it's all said and done, you have about like a little more than 1/8 of an inch, maybe 1/8 of an inch between wires, which is fine. But you might have to be putting more of these on to get to accomplish the goal you're after. Whereas if you had a thicker one, it would be holding it farther apart. So you may be able to get away with a few of them. But so yeah, at this point it's just about, you know, you deciding what looks good, like whether or not you want to put a bunch of them or just a minimal. Like on this side here, I put, ouch, ooh, that hurt. Smacked my head on the hood. I put quite a few. So, you know, it's kind of up to you how many you want to do and whatnot. So, anyways, I know this was a little bit of a longer video, but I hope it was helpful. Alright, so I got the one side finished up, and I'll do the other side later, but just to kind of show you so you have an idea of how I did things here. So, as I mentioned, all of these boots are kind of running off in a way, and nothing's touching here. Then I got a wire loom here. Then I decided to actually just leave that zip tie one on that I did for illustration. And then I have another one here. I'll probably move that up a little bit so it's not touching the valve cover. But then these two guys here, they split off. Let's see, can you see that? So they come here and then they split. So they're not touching anything. And but then I join them together just to stabilize it a little bit and to keep them apart. Then up here you can see it's not touching. And like, you know, this is the kind of thing over time things may move around a little bit, so you might have to reevaluate down the road, but for right now it's fine. And then here these ones come off, they split. Now I think I ran into this problem last time maybe, but there wasn't really a way that I could keep this one from hitting the dipstick there, so it's not really a problem other than I just want to be, you know, doubly sure that I'm not losing any spark or any efficiency with the ignition system. So I cut a hose, little piece of hose, and then I just slid it down the middle, slipped it over, and put 2 zip ties on that. On the other side, just hold it on. I was a little bit oversized. I think I had some smaller tubing last time, so it is loose on there, but it's just sitting there, so that'll be fine. So yeah, that's how I did that, and pretty happy with how this one turned out. I'm really hoping this fixes the problem. If that doesn't, I think I'm gonna check into the distributor cap there. But you know, it looks fine, but we'll see. Hopefully this will fix the problem with the sparking issue that I was having. It's not fun getting zapped. It's also kind of hard to adjust your carburetor because you're scared to go in there. I rigged up like a really long screwdriver and wrapped it in electrical tape, but that was hard because it's hard to get to those adjustment screws. Okay, well anyways, I think that's it for today. So thanks for watching, and hopefully you found this helpful. And any comments or criticism or critiquing or I don't know, whatever you want to put in the comments, I'd be appreciated. And also appreciate it if you like and subscribe to my channel and like the video and share it with anybody who might need some pointers. And thanks for watching. Okay, so I just wanted to clarify one thing I said briefly at the beginning of the video, but especially if this is your first time doing plug wires, I just want to reiterate so there's no confusion. You have to keep each wire in the same places that it was before. So that's why I said only do one at a time. So you can take one wire off and replace it so there's no confusion as to which cylinder it went to or whatever. Because if you pull them all off, you're never going to remember. And then trying to look up the schematics for it, especially if you're not experienced, is very complicated. So yeah, just do one at a time, root it, you know, the best you can, and if you have to play around with them and unplug them and, you know, switch them around, just make sure you do one at a time, and to make sure exactly. So say like was like, oh, I put one on that's too short. Well, I'll take that one off and put a different one on instead of trying to take like 3 off at once or whatever. So anyways, that's probably more than enough explanation, but just wanted to put that in there.